Wake up your morning in a brand new way with the positive people, places, events, and things in and around your neighborhood and around the world. No matter where you live, your mornings are about to get better. It's the refreshing way to start your day. No doom or gloom, just bright sunshine no matter what the weather. Metro Magazine with Bonnie McDaniel. Inspiring, informative, intelligent, Ion. Positively the best way to start your morning. Good morning and welcome to Metro Magazine. I'm Bonnie McDaniel and we're so glad you're here this morning. If you recall, we are doing a two-part series on domestic violence. I know a very, very tough topic to talk about. And part two is really something that I don't think you may have been privy to tuning into as far as a conversation about what happens in this community. We're going to be talking to two gentlemen. One is going to give us some very startling statistics on what happens in the gay community. And there's also a gentleman who's going to speak to us this morning about a personal experience he had with domestic violence. So please join me in welcoming Trystin here. You're not a stranger. As a matter of fact, if I can put you on blast, you're actually the person who designed our beautiful, beautiful set that we get so many compliments on.
Love that.
And as a matter of fact, you did this beautiful painting, and I still marvel at how quickly you did it. So we're so pleased to have you here.
Good to be here.
I should also mention that you are the producer, and also you have a radio show called Common Ties. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. And Raphael,
yes,
you are one brave brother, and I really appreciate you deciding to come on and share your story, because it's a story that needs to be told.
Absolutely.
In the first segment of this two-part series, I talked about the fact that domestic violence is something that there's a lot of shame and embarrassment, fear associated with, and so very often people don't talk about it, and they certainly don't imagine it taking place in the gay community. And I will be the first person to say that when I think about the gay community, first of all, I think of people who have courage, who have decided that this is how I'm going to live my life. I have the right to live my life like this. This is who I am. But I never think about the other side, where they're just like everybody else who get in relationships that are toxic.
Absolutely.
Things happen. They have the same fears and concerns that the heterosexual community have. And so I really applaud you for consenting to come on and talk to us about this. Now, Trystin, I want to just also mention how I came about doing this on the gay community, and you were the very first person, because I know you're very knowledgeable and you know a lot of people, especially around the DC area. So when I reached out to you, you made me aware of your radio show. So talk a little bit about Common Ties and what that is.
You know, it's interesting. This radio show, Common Ties Live, is on Blog Talk Radio. The show comes on Monday nights from 11 to 12:30. Sometimes we do a 2-hour extension. But the show came about because of a Facebook group called Common Ties, which was created by a good friend of mine, DJ Hunter, Antonio Driver, and August Leo Rain. These three men came together and conceptualized a group that was basically for common ties that bond us together as gay men, resources, and what we call more. So basically, it's a group where you can talk about anything. Nothing is off limits, except, you know, we don't allow nudity and things of that nature, anything indecent. But it's a support group, and we have over 400 persons. And the radio show was an idea that grew from all of the posts throughout the group. And so we're on our 6th or 7th show now, and we've talked everything about sex, we've talked about rape, we've talked about domestic violence. Last night's show was about self-esteem, and these are really prevalent topics that are popular and that are necessary to discuss within the LGBT community.
And you know, I want to also point out, I know that because most people know me as a church girl, very conservative, but I have a little edge to me.
Yes.
But I also want to point out the fact that as a part of that, being that church girl, I know that we were all called to love.
Absolutely.
And to be compassionate and to be concerned about everybody who is a part of our community. And so some of you out there are probably going to be a little startled that I'm talking about this subject, but please bear in mind, this is not a place of judgment. It's a place of love and compassion and understanding that we all grapple with something. And again, I'm so pleased that you decided that you're taking time out from your busy schedules to talk about this. So you mentioned that this is Common Ties is gay men. So this is not the gay lesbian women are not a part of this group.
We have one transgendered woman in the group. And she is a phenomenal asset to our group. So it's primarily men and one transgendered woman.
Okay, okay. And the other thing too, when I think about the fact that every now and then you'll see on the news a lot of violence that happens against, you're talking about transgender women and men, and people justify that in their minds as far as why it's happening to them, and that almost to the point of saying that, you deserve that. Talk about what that feels like, especially, Raphael, being a victim, if you will, of domestic violence. Talk about that and how that has affected your being able to function as an abused person.
Well, it's actually made me stronger as a person. It makes me just want to give every day my all. Because there's always, no matter what you do, you're going to experience some type of hate, negativity. And so that, if you're strong enough to be that type of person, it's almost like you're forcing yourself to overcome it all. I mean, because I remember a time when I came out to my parents and they were saying that you can't stay here. So,
how old were you when you came out? And first of all, before we even go there, how old were you when you realized you were different?
Very young.
Okay.
Very young, maybe 12, 11, 12. I just didn't like to do the norm things. Okay. And by all means, I love football, and I mean most people they're surprised. I love the NFL and things of that, but I knew that I was different once it came down to the toys that I liked. And I like to play building a house with the Legos versus building trucks and crashing them and things. I think that and I think my mother knew too.
Okay.
And coming from a strong family in the church, the Christian church, it was hard. And I still struggle with those, those whispers at family cookouts and functions. But my immediate family over the years have been nothing but supportive. But it took a while to get there. It took a long time. And I think when they realized that I was in a domestic relationship, or a domestic violence situation, it made my sisters and cousins and it made us closer. So
talk about, because you were 12 when you realized you were different, and you were how old when you came out to your parents?
16.
16. So were you dating at that time?
Yes, I was dating a much older guy, 27.
So what was that relationship like? Was it an abusive relationship or?
Controlling.
Controlling.
Very controlling, and it was just, my mom put me out. So during that age,
because of your coming out?
Yes.
Okay.
But the age of 16 that's you search ego identity. You're going through adolescence. You're going through the fear of graduating high school, and so it was all of that. And then they say, get out. And
so you have this 27-year-old.
Yes.
Who is there, and he's your savior, if you will.
Confidant. Everything.
Yeah. How did you meet him?
There was a website. It was way back. I can't even remember what type of social networking site we were on back then, but BGC Live or one of those websites. And so it was like a networking site, and I met him. And then I come to realize that he was DL. He had children. He had a girlfriend, and it was just. But to me at that time, young, it's cool. He was a round the way guy, and if you saw him, you wouldn't know. And so I think that excited me. But when I realized that he didn't want me to come out, he didn't want me to have gay friends. And once he realized that I was becoming, I guess, out more and more as I was getting older and becoming comfortable, he would just.
So when you were put out, you went to him?
Yes.
To live?
Yes, briefly. I would say maybe 6 months off and on. Very, very
So
briefly.
he was alone. He wasn't, his girlfriend and the children were not living with him.
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
He was having like one day a week or with his child or something.
Okay.
And I mean, I would see them. I mean, I would be inside, and the child would go out. I mean, the child was 7 years old, so we just had to portray the image of that we were just homies, I would say.
Do you think he scoped you out, knowing that what your situation was, and kind of targeted you like as an easy prey, if you will?
Possibly. I
Okay.
still play with that idea even many years later today.
Okay, because I was talking to a woman in our first part of the series, and she was talking about her situation, which was a very difficult one in a household where her older sister, was abusing her parents, and there was some things going on with her. And as a matter of fact, her sister wound up at some point. She killed their father. And she has some mental issues, and she was talking about the fact that when she met her then boyfriend, she found him as a place of refuge, if you will. So this sounds very similar in terms of yourself. You're having some place to go where you could seek refuge from a very uncomfortable situation.
And that's what it was. I think the hardest part is, you're African American, gay. Then you want to add another stripe to it. And I mean, we're just now being able to marry in mainstream, society. So the worst thing you want to do at that point in time was to come out and say, I'm gay, I'm homeless, I need a place to stay, and also I'm being beat up in a situation. So I think it was more of a fear. And the way I dealt with mine, it was music, and I still go through.
Okay.
I still go through it.
So you moved in with this person, and when was the first indication to you that he was an abuser? Did it happen right away, or was there kind of a subtle thing that happened? And you talked about controlling, which seems to be an underlying factor that happens in all situations where there's abuse.
Yeah.
Talk about, was there, a little tap here or a little slap there? I mean, how did he gradually get into the abuse, or did it happen right away?
It was one of those. It just changed. I remember my friend. I wanted to hang out, and it was a place that younger gays in Washington D.C. would actually hang out at Union Station. It was Friday night. I wanted to go and hang out with the people who I viewed as stronger than, because I mean they were out. I mean, and I wasn't. I've never been like over the top flaming, I guess you would call it, as to where you would. Just look at me and say it. But those are the people that I wanted to hang out with because I viewed them as strong. And so I wanted to go hang out. And as I was leaving out, the first blow was a lamp to my back, like a one of those fiberglass lamps.
Did it come without warning?
Yeah, I was walking out of the door. So
he had not indicated to you that he disapproved? Not that it mattered, but I was just wondering.
I mean, he would say things like, oh, you want to go do this and you want to go do that. I mean, throughout the week, because I was one of those people, oh, well, this is what I'm doing Friday and this is what I'm doing this day and that day. And we would always have to have a plan of, talk about our plans throughout the week because, he wants to have an explanation for who's coming in and out of his apartment and things, because he had neighbors. I mean, it wasn't like we were away. We were living in, Minnesota, D.C., and it was Minnesota Avenue. So it was a rough neighborhood, too.
So he had a girlfriend and he had a child.
Yes.
So you said he was DL. So at what point did she realize there was a relationship going on, or did she realize?
She may not even know to this day.
Oh wow.
I'm pretty sure that she's not she's still not, because I think it was more of a baby mom situation. After a while, I stopped asking questions because I feared for my life so many times that I just stopped asking.
Trystin, I know you've done a lot of research in the area of what happens in the gay community. Is this very typical when young men are talk about what normally transpires?
Listening to Raphael tell that story, there are many older men that pray upon younger men. About the time when I was 16 years old, I wasn't dating anyone, but I was very promiscuous, and I was having interactions with men that in some cases were 2x, 3x my age. And it's a level of vulnerability that they prey on as a weakness, to ultimately become a provider. Whereas he was not having a provider situation because his parents threw him out. So this is an opportunistic situation where this older gentleman can control him and almost kind of make him whatever he wanted him to be. And so when he didn't adhere, or when he decided to be independent, this is atypical of what happens in the community. You get into these domestic violence situations, and sometimes it's not always a domestic violence situation. It could ultimately be a controlling situation where you're given a curfew, or you're told, well, you're living with me, you have to be in at this time, or you're manipulated to feel bad about the choices that you're making because you're not pleasing this individual. And for someone to be so young, 16 years old, one, that's statutory rape.
I was about to ask you about that. Yeah. So I know, in listening to the show, or maybe it was in my conversation with someone else that I interviewed to come on today, there was mention that he had gone, I think it was during my conversation, he had gone to the police to get help, and the response was very different. So talk about that, because that's one of the things I want people to walk away with this morning, and that is that we're talking human beings here, regardless of their sexual orientation, who have the same rights and deserve to be protected. And if somebody cuts you, you're going to bleed just like I will. So that your sexual orientation is not the conversation here.
It's very different for homosexuals in the LGBT community, because there is a blatant stigmatization in this community when it comes to same-gender rape. And so oftentimes the police don't necessarily take that seriously as opposite sex rape, whereas a man is raping a woman would automatically go to the hospital. They would do a rape kit analysis. And
what do they do? I mean, do they do anything?
There's a level of shame that comes with it in the homosexual community, in a sense where you're a man that has been raped. Ultimately, I did an interview with someone on the show about rape, and he didn't want to go to the police station because there's a level of humiliation. I'm gay, I got raped by a man. And so when he went, the police officers didn't really take it seriously. And that's across the board. It's a really, really unfortunate thing. I think that we're making strides in the community so that there is a level of seriousness that is taken when a gay man or a gay woman or a transgendered woman or man comes in and states that they have been raped. But there is a level of shame that you're made to feel when you go to the authorities and say that you've been raped. And the several conversations that I've had, interviews that I've conducted on the radio, across the board, that has been the reaction, whether it was rape or a domestic violence situation.
To really bring awareness about what's transpiring in terms of domestic violence, let's talk about some statistics. Absolutely. Because when I listened to the show, and you subsequently shared some with me afterwards, I was stunned. Let's talk about some of the statistics within the gay community.
The highest number of domestic violence statistics, according to the CDC's National Intimate Partner Survey, which was done in 2012 and 2010, and then they did a reanalysis in 2013, 43% of domestic violence cases in the gay community are with lesbian women. The other 26,
that's very, very high.
Very, very high, and the other 26% is actually within gay men. And then, we fall down to transgendered persons and bisexual persons. Bisexual persons actually make up 37.3%. Of the spectrum, and the percentages are scary. We are seeing very high numbers in the LGBT community. The numbers are actually higher in the LGBT community versus the heterosexual community, which is only 29%. And
that was the thing that really startled me.
Absolutely, it's measured by each area. So you're measuring gay men, you're measuring transgendered women, you're measuring lesbians, as well as heterosexuals and bisexuals. And lesbian women having a staggering rate of 43% domestic violence cases in 2013 alone. So we've got some work to do in our community.
So what do you think, what do you attribute that to? Have you done any research? Have they done any research to try to determine why it's so high, for instance, among lesbian women, or even why is it happening with the gay men?
What's interesting is that a lot of the research that I've seen thus far is pointing to the emotional impact and societal impact on the LGBT community, its culture, the laws that center around our community, previously such as marriage, adoption of children, things of that nature. Gender roles play a very, very, very key role.
Gender roles in terms of who takes the masculine role versus
absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that, because there is many misconceptions within our community, because oftentimes, people related will say to a gay man like myself, they'll say, well, who's the man in the relationship and who's the woman? Our relationships are not identified as that.
Okay. So school me. How is it?
In some cases, you have a person in the relationship that's more in an effeminate role and one that's in a more masculine role, and that also goes in lesbian culture as well. In the trans culture, you actually have trans women, trans men. So some of the roles are kind of viewed as more heterosexual, but these are still members of the LGBT community who have just had gender reassignment surgery. So those are some of the attributes that contribute to many of the domestic violence situations that we're seeing, and also past situations where genetics come into play, your family history, a history of violence, being associated with violence, being exposed to violence. Those are many of the top statistical outcomes that they were able to find that are attributed to domestic violence.
Okay, and I want to, first of all, before I ask a question, I always like to say that I mean it with the utmost respect. You know me, Trystin.
Absolutely.
Love transcends everything I do. So if I'm asking a question that seems obvious, it's due to my ignorance. I have wondered, so you have a transgender, let's use Caitlyn Jenner as an example, who is, I'm assuming he's had the surgery and all that stuff done. Let's make the assumption, even if we don't know that to be a fact.
She has not, but we can
make that. Yeah. So once a guy makes that transition and has the surgery and becomes a female, is she now considered a lesbian? Woman?
Okay, so I see where you're going with this.
I'm trying to figure out. So where's the assignment, or is there an assignment?
Right, I'm going to give you a good example. We can use Caitlyn Jenner. We can also use a transgendered woman that's in our group who doesn't mind me saying her name on television. Her name is Aurora, and Aurora is a young woman who's in college. I won't say where she goes to school, but it's a college in the local area, and she identifies as a woman. She is a trans woman who is on hormones. She's going through hormone
So she's
therapy.
going to become a guy.
She's going to become. She's a woman who has not gone through her gender reassignment surgery. Once you identify as whatever sex you identify with. So, for example, if Raphael is a man now in full sight, however, Raphael can identify as a woman. He is now considered a trans woman. And at some point, Raphael may decide, as Aurora has decided and Caitlyn Jenner has decided, they have decided to go through the process of transforming into a woman. Thus, they are now transgendered. So they now identify with being women. You do not have to have gender reassignment surgery to identify as being a woman. However, most transgendered persons actually go through their gender reassignment surgery at some point. There is a tremendous amount of psychological preparation that they go through and support that they get to actually go through that transition of reassigning their genitalia. They go through the hormone therapy to ultimately modify their vocals, to soften their voices and actually develop more female formalities such as breast. Many have gone through changes such as Bruce Jenner Jenner, where he's going through facial feminization surgery, Aurora in this case actually naturally has a feminine look.
Okay.
So that I've noticed. And so that is what we define transgender. Those are all the steps that you take. So you don't necessarily have to have gender reassignment surgery immediately in order to identify as the opposite sex if you are a man identifying as a woman.
Okay. So you're now a woman. You've had the reassignment. So if she decides to date a female, is she considered lesbian?
Well, I think absolutely she would be considered a lesbian because, for example, Caitlyn Jenner is a woman now, or is a trans woman, and has grappled with that because she still is interested in women, but automatically you become a lesbian, because
because that's something I didn't understand. That was a question I had.
You're a woman dating a woman. I mean, we refer to trans persons as trans women. I refer, for example, at Aurora as a woman. She is, although legally she would be considered trans because once upon a time she was a man, she was born as a man, but she is a woman. And so if Aurora dated a woman, she would be a lesbian. Aurora's still trans if she, if she's dating a man, she would still be part of the LGBT community. Because that, transgendered persons are a part of our community.
Right.
We're going to take a quick break because I'm going to come back and talk more about your experience because we want to stay a little focused on domestic violence. But I wanted you, and I appreciate you really describing or giving an explanation of the different segments of the gay community, because as knowledgeable as I think I am, there's a lot I don't know that I have learned since learning about Common Ties. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with more Metro Magazine.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, no, I won't be afraid, no, I won't be afraid, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, stand by me, oh, stand by me. Won't you stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, all the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. And darling, stand by me, oh, stand by me. Won't you stand by me.
Up to 40% of businesses never recover after experiencing a major disaster. Make a plan at ready.gov/business.
We're here with Trystin and Raphael, and we are talking about domestic violence in the gay community. And Trystin, you have educated this woman this morning about a lot of things that I thought I knew.
It's my job.
And I really, and you know, education is key, because if you understand, it teaches a lot about tolerance. It teaches a lot of things when you understand that at the end of the day, we're dealing with human beings.
Exactly.
Period. That's all it's
Yes.
about. So when we went to break, I wanted to come back to you, Raphael,
Yes.
because you do have a very compelling story. I want to talk a little bit more about your situation. So you found yourself in a relationship with a 27-year-old because he became your refuge, if you will.
Yes.
And he was abusive. So what made you finally decide to leave that relationship? Was it a beatdown, or what happened?
It was a process.
Okay.
It's
interesting you say that, because my last guest said, okay, talk about
It was
that.
a process because I think the materialistic things at 17, 16, 17 were, it's like, I'll smack you upside the head for going out, but I'll buy you the new Jordans on next Saturday.
So he was buying your affection,
It was
providing
working.
security.
I
Yeah.
loved clothes and shoes, and I still do now, but
Oh, you're pretty clean. I can tell that.
thank you. And it's when you look back at it and you're saying, wow. So for me I can totally understand especially if you're in a relationship where this guy has millions of dollars, and I wasn't in that relationship. I was just with your regular around the corner, 9-to-5 guy. Mm-hmm. So I think once my cousin kind of knew something was going on, my cousin's my confidant. And
Is this a male or female?
this is a female.
Okay.
And she actually runs an organization, and she pretty much, I reached out to her, and one day she just said, come home, come over. And it was a slow process. And for a while, she knew that there was something going on, but I think she thought I was in a gang, because every time she would see me, I might have a different bruise. I might have a scar, a bite mark.
So what was he doing to you?
I've been hit with a pistol in the back of my head. I have like this mark back here, and choking, a lot of choking, even locking me in the bathroom for hours at a time, and just I think I was more reactive, and so in the heat of everything that's going on, I'm actually calm. I'm actually getting slapped upside the head, and I'm calm at that time because I was afraid to lash out.
Did you think you deserved it?
I thought that God was punishing me
For what?
for my lifestyle.
Interesting. And so this was your payback, and you were willing to accept the punishment, if you will.
Yes, I think that
It's interesting you say that, and I dwell there for a minute, because I know in some of the research I did and talking to different people from different backgrounds, the response was the same. They're getting what they deserve.
yeah.
It's interesting that you say that, because nobody deserves that.
I think that when you wake up every day and you're growing up in this faith-based background, and you're taught to church Sunday, and then you hear the condemning of just gay men and just the LGBT community in its entirety. I think for a long time, I even before I came out, I think people who knew me on a regular basis, they had an assumption. So I was honestly hiding from myself for a long time.
Trystin, do you think homosexuality is a sin?
Absolutely not. I think that we're all children of God, and I think that if it was a sin, I believe that many of us are punished when we commit sins. And I think that if it wasn't allowable by God, it wouldn't be here on earth.
Interesting. Do you think it's a sin?
I don't. I
When
think
did
that-
you when did you get to the point where you did not feel as though God were punishing you?
and it took a long time, about maybe 2012, 13.
Okay.
And it was when I had a bad church experience. I went
Talk
for
about
someone's
that.
christening,
Okay.
and I went for a christening, and my we're going to sit through the whole ceremony, and the baby, and it's my little cousin, and the pastor. I mean, he tore the community apart. I mean, it was vicious stuff, and everybody's in the aisle. I mean,
tore what community apart?
I'm sorry, the gay community, my community, and.
Well, so let me get the. So was this baby a child of a gay couple,
No,
or was
no.
it targeted toward
just
you?
a relative of mine, and I happened to just be going to the christening, but it was just happened to be, when the christening is normally after the ceremony.
Sure.
So you will end up sitting through, because it was a church that I visited, and I didn't know anything about the
Did he
church.
target you though?
No. He just happened to be, I was there on that Sunday, and that's what the topic was.
All about homosexuality.
Yes. And he was saying how other churches allow, he called them fairies. How other churches allow fairies to play instruments and be deacons and things of that nature. And I actually walked out. Right down the aisle in the middle. Walked out. And
Of the christening.
out of the service.
Okay.
Cried for days and days, and then I talked to a few people, and they were older, and reached out to them, and then I started doing some searching and started developing a relationship with God for myself. And once I accepted Him for myself, then I realized that I am a person and I am here for a reason. And that is to tell my story. So,
And again, I know that. First of all, I'm a pastor's daughter. My dad's deceased. I came up in a very loving home, one where we had all kinds of people in my community. And I remember, she wasn't a cousin, but I remember, and I grew up in the South.
oh,
And
Yeah.
there was this woman, I remember it vividly, but I was a little girl, and there was a woman and her brother who lived around the block from us. And he was a gay man, and they were brother and sister, and she was a lesbian. And I remembered they were like an anomaly in the community. But I remembered, we used to call her cousin Jenny, but she wasn't related to us. But
Okay.
she would come to our house, and she was, for all intents and purposes, she was a man because she functioned as a man. And my parents would always give her work to do around the house because that's how she earned her money, because nobody else would hire her. So she would go around and do odd jobs. I mean, and my dad was a carpenter by profession, and, other outside of, pastoring our church. And very often you would find Cousin Jenny working alongside him, doing whatever carpentry work he was doing. But so I grew up in an environment where, you would hear people say things about them, but I was not raised, even though my dad was a pastor. And again, you got to, in context, understand, I lived in the South.
yeah.
So for me, the idea of Christians, because I am a Christian, not loving someone because of their sexual orientation, and yeah, I have my own opinion about different things.
Right.
That's my opinion, but it does not take away the fact that I love you as a human being. So the idea that this happens in a church is very, I don't want to say foreign, because I see it all the time, and I
Right.
hear it all the time from well-meaning, judgmental Christians who think that, you
That
don't
was-
deserve love.
That was
And
probably the worst day
did you walk away from church after that?
for a long time.
Okay.
I mean, I started to search, but I would have days where I'm like, I would just close the Bible up and just put it down. Like,
Yeah.
what I'm interpreting from it, it didn't say that.
Yeah.
So for a long time, it took 2012, 13, 14. I think I didn't really step foot back into a church and felt comfortable as an openly gay man until last year.
Yeah. Because I often wonder what God must think of us and how we perceive and how we function. And if you are of the mindset that it is a sin, then the Bible then says sin is sin.
Yes.
So if I lie, I've sinned. So that make me less than you, who have, if you decide that homosexuality is a sin, if that's what your interpretation is, does that make my sin any less than yours? Because then the Bible says it doesn't matter.
It's all equal, right?
It's all equal. So, how did you get away from that relationship? When you finally, I know you were going back and forth to your cousin, right? And when did you decide, I'm done?
When my cousin actually said, you're going to stay with me until you figure out what it is that you want to do with your life in its entirety. Because remember, I was displaced from home. I had the pre-graduating high school. Like I said, ego identity, the regular adolescent stuff that's going on in that brain that's still developing and learning. And I think when I graduated high school, I think I was done because I didn't really need them anymore. And I think in the end, a part of me held on to just a little bit so that I could have the things that I needed, because it was shelter, it was refuge, it was home, it was everything that I needed.
And I can't help but remember you were talking about the fact that a lot of older men and older women, and I know of a couple of older women who look for those women or look for those men who are trying to figure it out, and they pray and they provide, and they are very adept at figuring out what your issues are, and they provide whatever it is you think you need at the time. And so did that create more confusion for you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
'Cause we would go through a few days where we would be fine. You know, watching football. I mean, I think it was PlayStation back then. You know, playing PlayStation, hanging out with his son. And it was times, but it would be times when the girlfriend would text and say, oh, I guess let's go see a movie or let's do this. We didn't really
So what was your reaction? Because you're in a relationship with him and he's having a little side thing. I mean, how does that work?
I allowed it.
Oh, okay.
I allowed it.
So was he okay with you having other relationships,
Oh, no.
or were you exclusive to him?
No.
That's interesting. So it was about control.
To go to school, be in by 9:30, and every move made, I would have to let him know.
So he was your lover and your father and wow.
Yes.
So you left that relationship finally. Were there other abusive relationships? Talk about.
Yes. But you know what? I think that going through that was the most trying time. I went through something within the last 2 years where I guess I became numb. That situation made me numb. So there were a lot of things that I would allow in my relationships that the average person wouldn't see as normal.
How did you get into that relationship? You said the past couple of years. Did you initiate it, or were you?
I initiated it.
So this person was on par in terms of age, or was it an older person?
No, same maybe 2 year age difference.
Okay.
So
there was some parity there.
Yeah, we started off as really, really, really good friends, but they were in an abusive relationship in their past, and I didn't realize that until we were really on. And once we became in a committed relationship and started to live together, they would pretty much, if I would say something that they didn't like, they would kind of jack me up, like in public. And
Jack you? What do you mean by jack you up?
Grab you by the collar and say, "Hey, don't walk away from me."
Oh, literally jack you up.
Yeah, yes, in the mall, different places, but they didn't see that as I presumed it as love. I was persuaded to think that, you know, because of the things that I was saying. Now, by no means were some of the things I was saying, you know, something that I would say in church, but that doesn't give anybody the right to put their hands on you. And I think that when I realized that this could cost me my career. I mean, there's a lot at stake. Was it? But you know,
you bring up an interesting point, because the woman who I interviewed for the first segment of this series, she talked about, she has very high security clearance. She works at the Pentagon. and she was very concerned. Of course, I understood she was concerned because she had to take care of her children. But hearing you say almost the same thing, different situation,
Mm-hmm.
where does your value come into this? Forget about the job. But where does your value come into play? Was that ever
Yeah.
the most concern you had, or was it always your livelihood? Because a lot of people who are in abusive situations, that's what the main consideration is. I got to live.
Right.
It was, I won't fib and say the livelihood is definitely the main concern, but when you're in it, it's different. But say if you go on vacation with your girlfriends and you're doing something and you just happen to vent, and somebody say, he did what? And then it'll start, your wheels will start to turn like, wait a minute, that's not normal. But when you're in it, you become used to it. If you, for example, if every Thanksgiving you're expecting Aunt whoever to cook those greens with that certain, so if the pepper's just a little bit off right there, you're going to know something is wrong. So you won't know until someone else
have a different experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to have a different experience. And I noticed that the first situation being so bad, it made me say, well, I guess I'm not being pistol whipped in this situation. So you know what? I guess a knock upside the head or choking them all is not so bad.
Wow. Was there ever a situation where you reported him for the violence?
Yes.
And what was the response of the police?
Well, the community that we lived in was, so to speak, maybe almost an upscale, middle-class neighborhood. And the police actually in this situation was very, very professional.
Okay.
And
how did they handle that differently from, had you reported it before?
Yeah,
in another
yes.
situation? And what was the difference in the response?
More aggressive, more sit down and shut up. I'm gonna because in domestic violence they can't really put either of you out of the home if you're living together. So they just came in and said, hey, you know what? And all the guys came in, the police officers, they came into the situation, but you can tell that they did not want to touch it. It was Prince George's County Police. They didn't want to touch it. And so they left out, and they had a female sheriff come in and sort of say, listen, guys. And so, of course, we didn't want to go to jail on a Saturday night. So we just pretty much.
Trystin, talk about sensitivity. Is that something that, are you aware of whether or not police academies or wherever they receive their training, is that something that is part of the curriculum?
You know what? I don't know if it is. What we're seeing now is what I call the rise of the LGBT community. The empire is starting to become very bigger, and everyone's noticing it. I think that more legal jurisdictions, police academies, and things of that nature are becoming aware of the issues that are involved in this community. I think that they are now implementing necessary training and resources to deal with the rising issues amongst domestic violence amongst this community, and training is essential.
Are there people out there who have curriculums or who are equipped to go and train? And
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, there are many organizations, us helping us in the District of Columbia. There's an organization called Mandate that has a monthly conference.
Okay. And it's Mandate, M-A-N-D-A-T-E.
Yes.
Okay.
These are all LGBTQ organizations, Whitman Walker, that service our community and that offer seminars and services on a plethora of issues. And of course, domestic violence and rape within the LGBT community are one of them. Also, the District of Columbia Metropolitan Police Department has a department called the GLUE, and so it's the Gay and Lesbian Liaison Unit that actually works with issues within the District of Columbia. I'm not sure what Virginia and Maryland offers, and of course PG County being closest to us, and Alexandria and Arlington counties being closest, as well as Montgomery and Maryland. But particularly in DC, there is a liaison unit that is devoted for LGBTQ domestic violence issues. I don't know what the statistics are in terms of the number of issues or cases that have taken place in the District of Columbia, but typically the resolution to many of these matters is sending liaisons from the unit. The unit actually has a standing office in DuPont Circle, which of course is a gay neighborhood, and deals with a lot of the issues and cases in the LGBT community in the District of Columbia.
Okay, so Raphael,
Yes.
where are you now in terms of relationship? Are you in a healthy relationship where there's mutual respect, or where are you now?
I'm in a healthy relationship with myself.
You know what? And it's interesting. I keep referring back to the first segment of the series. The woman said, and I asked her, and I'm going to ask you the same question. I asked her if you could go back, and her situation started when she was, I think, 17 years old.
Too.
And when she started with, the abuse and all of that, and she wound up marrying a guy even after he abused her when they were dating.
Wow.
I said, if you could go back and give your younger self advice, what would that advice be so that you don't find yourself in what transpired in your life? What would the answer to that question be?
Be a little less materialistic at that point in time, since I was unable to do it for myself.
Okay.
Be a kid, go to school, and, go to Auntie's house. I mean, there were other places, but, I just wanted to be there.
You've said something that sparked me to ask that question. You said, when I asked you, where are you now? You said you're in a relationship with yourself.
It's healthy.
Is that advice you would give yourself as a younger person to really get to know Raphael? Absolutely.
I think that when you know your worth and you take time out to focus on yourself, then you won't allow as many things to go on. You may not allow none of it. But just straight out of high school or straight out of any, especially one situation to the next, and just take time out to say, what do I really like? What type of people do I like? Who am I attracted to? And it's a process, and it's a cleansing process. And I pray about it, so when the time is right, I may, settle down, but I'm not actively looking. I'm just enjoying my life right now.
You mentioned early on that you thought a lot of the abuse that you were dealing with was God's way of punishing you. You no longer feel that. You now say, you just mentioned the fact that you pray about it. Does God hear Raphael's prayers?
Absolutely. I woke up today.
Okay.
I was able to come out and with you early this morning, so
okay.
I'm okay with that.
Trystin.
Yes, ma'am.
This is not about Trystin, but I remember we were having lunch one day, and I was talking to you about your journey into recognizing and accepting, the fact that you're gay. And you said something to me that just really warmed my heart. And I did see some posts that you put on Facebook about your mom. Talk about that, because you said she's always been very supportive. Or talk about that.
I came out when I was 29 years old, which was just 3 years ago. Turned 33 next. It's interesting. I had to sit my mother down at age 29, and I was going to the Dominican Republic to celebrate my birthday, and I said, I'm not going into age 30 with this on my back. And so my mom said, well, I've always known. I was just waiting for you.
Oh, wow.
And, and I appreciated that. But my mother has been my biggest supporter. And the one thing that my mother taught me in life from very young was that you have to love yourself first.
And that seems to be the,
Yeah, and so
I would assume nobody's ever come up on Trystin.
Oh, I've never had any of those issues, and I'm a very no-nonsense type of person.
I know you are,
operate, and so, so I don't have those issues. I'm very single. I'm happy. I'm dating, and I'm not looking for anything, and I'm not looking for anyone to do anything for me. I'm very much so self-sufficient, and I provide for myself. And that's where I am. I've been there for a long time. But the one thing that I'm finding now in my storyline is that I'm losing a lot of bad people. So I'm purging. So, you know, all these pages of my life are now on this board, you know, and so it's there, and I'm burning them as they come out of the book. And that's the one thing that I think for you, Raphael, that you will experience. You're going to start losing people if you haven't lost them already.
Lots.
You know.
And you know what that happens? It's not just a gay community thing. That happens as you understand that if we talk about the fact that God is in us, and if you can't love what's in you, which is yourself, you can't love and have a healthy relationship with anybody.
Right.
And you do reach a point in your life where you begin to understand that there are people who are part of my journey,
Right.
and that there are people who are not. I'm to love everybody, but some of them I love at a distance and not up close.
Right.
My grandmother had this quote, and she told me, very young, all that walk together must agree.
Yeah.
It means a lot. And I say that even when making new friends now. I don't have very, very many new friends.
And you don't need a lot.
No.
You can have, as a matter of fact, you can have a party by yourself.
New Year's I had last New Year's I had maybe 10 people that I could call on regular. Now I'm down to like one hand.
And you know what?
It's a process.
It is definitely a process. And on that note, I'm looking at the clock and we are running out of time really quickly. Trystin, very quickly, where can people go to get help who might find themselves in a domestic violence situation? I'm sure you have some numbers or something that you can talk about.
I think the first step that you should do is if someone's hitting you, you need to call 911. You need to go to the police. There are grief counselors and resources in every city around this country, particularly in this area, in the District of Columbia, Maryland, Virginia area. You have Mandate. You have Us Helping Us. There's the Whitman Walker Clinic. There's so many resources. For research, you can go onto the CDC's website, Center for Disease Control. You can Google domestic violence statistics and various studies that have taken place so that you are aware. And of course, they can watch the show today and at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's very early. Or you can, every Monday, 11 o'clock, Commentize Live on Blog Talk Radio. We're talking about different things that can save someone's life.
He's fantastic at it.
He's very, very good. And Trystin, I applaud you on the activism that you're taking within your community to make sure that people are treated with respect and that their lives are accepted.
Gay lives matter.
Yeah. And Raphael, thank you so much for having the courage to come on and tell a very personal side of your journey. I don't take it lightly that you're here, and I thank both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for shedding light on this very, very important topic within our community.
And at the end of the day, we are all human beings. We were designed from love and designed to love. It doesn't matter what gender, what race, what your cultural background is. We all deserve to be loved and to return that love and that generosity to those around us. That's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. And I know you could have been any place this morning, but you decided to spend your time at 6 a.m. joining us on important topics. And I thank you so much for always being there and for your support. That's going to wrap it up for us this week. I thank you very much, and we will see you next time, same place on the flip side. Have a good week.